There's a particular kind of terror that comes not from what happens to you, but from what you allow to happen. From the moment you surrender control, knowing full well that you're walking into something that will change you forever. Something you can never undo. Elena lived with that terror for 9 months, carrying the weight of one reckless night, one impossible choice, one man who was never supposed to be more than a shadow in her memory. She thought she could walk away. She thought she could protect what grew inside her from the darkness of his world. But some men don't let go, and some nights echo louder than a lifetime of silence. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from, and if you feel it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. Your support makes all the difference. The gallery smelled of expensive wine and desperation, a combination Elena had learned to recognize in her 3 years working high-end art events in the city. It was the scent of people with too much money and not enough meaning, trying to purchase significance one canvas at a time. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, her black dress simple but elegant, her hair pulled back in a way that said, professional, not available. She'd learned early in this job that invisibility was a skill, that being beautiful but unremarkable kept you safe in rooms full of powerful men who believed everything had a price. The October evening had brought an unusual chill to the city, and the gallery's floor-to-ceiling windows revealed streets slick with recent rain, reflecting the golden light from inside like liquid amber. Elena carried a tray of champagne flutes, offering them with a polite smile that never reached her eyes, collecting empty glasses, ensuring no one's hand stayed empty long enough to become restless. She was good at this, good at being present, but invisible, helpful, but untouchable, until she felt his eyes on her. It wasn't the first time a man had stared. It happened constantly in this job. But this was different. This wasn't the appreciative glance of someone admiring beauty or the predatory assessment of someone calculating conquest. This was something heavier, more absolute, as if he wasn't just looking at her, but reading her, seeing past the careful mask she wore, straight into the parts of herself she kept hidden, even from her own reflection. Elena didn't look up immediately. She'd learned that too, that acknowledging attention gave it power. She finished offering champagne to a cluster of art collectors, debating the merits of abstract expressionism versus contemporary realism, words they used without understanding, knowledge they wore like expensive jewelry. Then, only then, did she allow herself to glance in his direction. He stood near the back of the gallery, partially obscured by shadow, which seemed intentional. Everything about him seemed intentional. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that was more striking than handsome, all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months, tailored with such precision it looked like a second skin. But it wasn't his appearance that made her breath catch. It was the way he held himself, the absolute stillness of someone who never questioned his right to occupy space, who never doubted that the world would rearrange itself around him. She'd seen powerful men before. The gallery attracted them like moths to flame. CEOs, politicians, tech entrepreneurs, all of them radiating that particular arrogance that comes from always being the most important person in any room. But this man was different. He didn't radiate power. He contained it, held it so tightly inside himself that it became gravitational, pulling everything toward him without any visible effort. Elena looked away quickly, but it was too late. Something had shifted in the air between them, some invisible acknowledgement that they'd seen each other, truly seen each other, and now there was no unknowing it. She moved to the next group of guests, her hand steady even though her pulse had quickened. She could still feel his gaze following her, tracking her movements through the crowd with the patience of someone who understood that everything eventually came to him if he waited long enough. 20 minutes passed. Elena refilled her tray, exchanged empty glasses for full ones, smiled at jokes that weren't funny, nodded at opinions that meant nothing. She told herself she wouldn't look at him again, that whatever that moment had been, it was over. Forgotten. Irrelevant. But her body betrayed her. Her eyes found him twice more, and each time he was still watching, still motionless, still waiting. The third time their eyes met, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile or a seductive one. It was knowing, as if he'd already seen how this night would end, and was simply allowing her time to catch up to the inevitable. Elena felt something dangerous unfold in her chest, something that felt like vertigo, like standing at the edge of a cliff and feeling the pull of the void below. She knew, in that moment, that she should leave. Should hand her tray to another server, collect her coat, walk out into the cold October night, and never look back. But she didn't. Instead, she did something she'd never done in 3 years of working these events. She held his gaze and smiled back. It was a small smile, barely there, but it was permission, an acknowledgement, a yes to a question he hadn't yet asked, but they both understood. His smile deepened, just slightly, and then he moved. Not toward her, which would have been too obvious, too crude. Instead, he turned and walked toward one of the gallery's private viewing rooms, spaces reserved for serious collectors to examine pieces away from the crowd. He paused at the doorway, glanced back at her once, and disappeared inside. Elena stood frozen in the middle of the gallery, champagne tray growing heavy in her hands. Every rational thought screamed at her to stay where she was, to ignore the invitation, to remember that men like him, men who commanded silence just by entering a room, were exactly the kind of danger she'd spent her whole life avoiding. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, warnings delivered in Spanish over Sunday dinners, lessons learned from a life spent watching women fall for men who offered everything except safety. Don't trust men with too much power, mija. They consume what they touch. But Elena's feet moved anyway, carrying her toward the private viewing room as if pulled by invisible thread. She set her tray on a nearby table, smoothed her dress with trembling hands, and told herself she was just checking if he needed anything, that this was still professional, still controllable. The viewing room was smaller than she expected, intimate, with soft lighting designed to showcase the art without overwhelming it. A single painting hung on the far wall, something dark and turbulent, all storm clouds and violent motion. And beneath it, waiting with that same absolute stillness, was him. He didn't speak immediately. Neither did she. They stood in the doorway's threshold, Elena still half in the gallery, half in this private space, her body understanding what her mind refused to acknowledge, that crossing completely into this room would mean crossing into something she couldn't uncross. "You can leave," he said finally, his voice low and textured, like smoke over gravel. It wasn't a command or a request. It was an observation, a reminder that she still had choice, that whatever happened next required her permission. Elena should have taken the escape he offered, should have nodded politely, backed away, returned to the safety of champagne trays, and practiced invisibility. Instead, she stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind her. The click of the latch sounded impossibly loud in the sudden silence. She watched something shift in his expression, satisfaction maybe, or recognition, as if she'd confirmed something he'd already known. "What's your name?" he asked, not moving from his position beneath the turbulent painting. "Elena." Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. "And you? Does it matter?" There was something almost playful in his tone, but underneath it ran a current of absolute seriousness. "You already know what I am." She did. Maybe not the specifics, not his name or title or the exact nature of his power, but she knew the shape of him, the weight. Men who stood like that, who carried silence like a weapon, who wore expensive suits like armor, they came from worlds where rules bent around them like light around gravity. "You shouldn't be talking to me," Elena said, but she didn't move toward the door. Probably not. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You shouldn't have followed me in here. I know. But you did anyway." It wasn't a question. Elena lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. "Maybe I wanted to see what you'd do." His smile returned, sharper this time, appreciative. "I'm not going to do anything. Not unless you ask me to." The air between them felt charged, dangerous, like the moment before lightning strikes, when everything goes still and electric. Elena knew she should leave, knew this man, whoever he was, represented exactly the kind of complication she couldn't afford. She had student loans to pay, rent due in 2 weeks, a life carefully constructed around stability and control. One night with someone like him could shatter all of it. "Tell me your name," she said instead, her voice barely above a whisper. He paused, and for the first time, she saw something like surprise cross his features. Then he smiled, different this time, more genuine. "Konstantin." Russian. That explained the accent she'd caught underneath his English, the slight emphasis on certain syllables. Konstantin. The name felt dangerous in her mind, foreign and sharp-edged. "Are you supposed to be here?" she asked. "At this gallery? In this city? In this country?" His smile widened. "That's a complicated question. Most questions about you probably are." "Smart," he acknowledged. "That's good. Smart women survive." There was something dark in the way he said survive, something that confirmed Elena's suspicions about what kind of man he really was. But instead of frightening her, it made her feel reckless, made her want to push further into this moment of temporary insanity. "What do you do, Konstantin?" She deliberately used his name, watched how he reacted to hearing it from her lips. "I make problems disappear," he said simply. "And sometimes, I create them." "Which are you doing right now?" "That depends entirely on you." He moved then, finally, crossing the small space between them with 3 measured steps. He didn't touch her, didn't invade her space, but his proximity changed everything. Elena could smell his cologne now, something expensive and understated, cedar and smoke, could see the flecks of gray in his dark eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow. "You should go back to work," he said quietly, but his body language contradicted his words. He was leaning slightly toward her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I should," Elena agreed. Neither of them moved. "I'm not a good man, Elena." The way he said her name, slightly foreign, slightly wrong, made it sound like something precious. "I've done things that would horrify you. I exist in a world where mercy is weakness, and kindness is currency you can't afford to spend. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand what you're considering." His eyes searched hers. "You're thinking about it, about saying yes to something you don't fully understand, about walking out of here with me." Elena's breath caught. She hadn't consciously formed that thought, but he was right. She was considering it, considering throwing away 3 years of careful professionalism, of maintaining boundaries, of being smart and safe and invisible. "I don't even know you," she whispered. "No. But you recognize me. I saw it the moment our eyes met. You know what I am, even if you don't know the details." He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and traced one finger along her jawline. The touch was feather-light, but it sent electricity through her entire body. You've been careful your whole life, built walls, played it safe. And tonight, for reasons you can't quite explain, you want to know what happens if you're not careful. Just once. How did he know that? How could he see so clearly into the parts of herself she barely acknowledged? Elena had spent 26 years being responsible, being the good daughter, the reliable employee, the friend who never caused drama. She'd watched other women make reckless choices and told herself she was smarter, more controlled. But standing here, with this dangerous man's finger still resting against her jaw, she realized something. She was exhausted from always being good, always being careful, always saying no to anything that might destabilize her carefully constructed life. One night, she heard herself say, her voice not quite steady, "Just tonight. Then we never see each other again." Something flickered in Constantine's eyes, something that might have been disappointment or approval or hunger. "Is that what you want?" Yes. The lie tasted like ashes on her tongue. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then one night, "My car is 3 blocks away. Meet me at the corner of 5th and Madison in 20 minutes. If you change your mind, don't come. No judgment, no consequences." He stepped back, breaking the electric tension between them. 20 minutes, Elena. Choose wisely." Then he walked out of the viewing room, leaving her standing alone beneath the violent painting, her heart racing, her hands trembling, her entire carefully constructed life balanced on the edge of a decision she knew she'd already made. Elena lasted 15 minutes. She finished her shift with mechanical precision, her body going through familiar motions while her mind spiraled. She collected glasses, offered champagne, smiled at guests, all while the clock on the gallery wall seemed to move too fast and too slow simultaneously. Her manager noticed nothing unusual. Why would he? Elena had perfected the art of appearing calm while chaos churned underneath. It was a skill learned young, born from a childhood of watching her mother maintain perfect composure, while Elena's father drank away their security, their stability, their hope. She'd promised herself she'd never be like her mother, never sacrifice safety for a man, never let desire override good judgment. Yet here she was, removing her work apron in the employee bathroom, checking her reflection in the spotted mirror, seeing a stranger looking back. Her eyes were too bright, her cheeks flushed. She looked alive in a way she hadn't in years. The walk to 5th and Madison took 8 minutes. The October air had grown colder, biting through her thin coat. Elena's heels clicked against wet pavement, the sound echoing off buildings that seemed to lean in, watching, judging. She could still turn back, could go home to her small apartment, her safe life, her careful choices. But her feet kept moving forward. Constantine stood exactly where he'd said, at the corner, partially shadowed by the overhang of a luxury boutique. He wore a long black coat now, collar turned up against the wind. When he saw her, his expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a tension releasing. "I wasn't certain you'd come," he said quietly. "Neither was I." He studied her for a moment, then gestured to a sleek black car idling at the curb. The windows were tinted so dark Elena couldn't see inside. A driver stood at attention by the rear door, his face professionally blank. This was real. This was actually happening. Elena felt her resolve waver. "You can still walk away," Constantine said, reading her hesitation. "I meant what I said. No judgment." "Stop giving me exits," Elena snapped, surprising herself with the sharpness in her voice. "If I wanted to leave, I would. Stop treating me like I don't know my own mind." His smile returned, that sharp, appreciative one. There she is. I was wondering when I'd see the fire underneath all that careful politeness. He opened the car door himself, dismissing the driver with a subtle gesture. After you. The car's interior smelled of leather and something else, something expensive Elena couldn't identify. The seats were butter soft, the space impossibly luxurious. Constantine slid in beside her, maintaining a careful distance, not touching, not crowding. The door closed with a heavy final sound. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic. Elena watched the familiar streets of her city slide past the tinted windows, everything looking different from inside this expensive cocoon, as if she'd crossed into a parallel world where normal rules didn't apply. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere private. Somewhere we won't be interrupted or observed." He paused. "I have enemies, Elena. People who watch me, who look for weaknesses. I won't expose you to that visibility." "Enemies?" Elena repeated. "You say that like it's normal. In my world, it is." They drove in silence for several minutes. Elena tried to reconcile the man beside her with the fantasy she'd constructed in the gallery viewing room. In that charged space, he'd been almost abstract, a symbol of recklessness, of one night of freedom. But here, in close quarters, he was startlingly real. She could see the slight stubble on his jaw, the way his hands rested calmly on his thighs, the controlled breathing that suggested a man always in complete control of himself. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "That I don't do things like this. That I've never done anything like this." "I know. How could you possibly know that? The way you hold yourself. The way you looked at me in the gallery, like you were fighting yourself. Women who make a habit of reckless choices don't fight that hard." Elena turned to face him fully. "Is that what you think this is? A reckless choice? Isn't it?" His eyes met hers in the darkness. "You don't know me. Don't know if I'm dangerous or safe. Yet you're in my car, letting me take you somewhere private, trusting that I meant what I said about one night and nothing more. Did you mean it?" "Yes." No hesitation, no doubt. "But that doesn't make this less reckless, Elena. Just less likely to destroy you." The car turned onto a street Elena didn't recognize, then pulled into an underground garage beneath a building of glass and steel. The luxury was understated, but unmistakable. This was where the city's wealthiest lived, insulated from the noise and chaos of street level. The driver opened Constantine's door. They exited into the cool, quiet space, their footsteps echoing. Constantine gestured toward a private elevator, placed his hand on a biometric scanner. The doors opened immediately. "Last chance," he said softly. Elena stepped into the elevator without responding. The doors closed. They began ascending. The elevator moved so smoothly Elena barely felt the motion. She watched the floor numbers climb on the digital display. 25. 30. 35. The penthouse, she realized. Of course it was the penthouse. "Elena!" Constantine's voice made her turn. He was standing very still, watching her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but instead felt like recognition. "Before we go any further, I need you to understand something. In my world, knowledge is dangerous. The less you know about me, the safer you are. After tonight, we can't see each other again. Not because I don't want to, but because wanting to would put you at risk." "I already agreed to one night," Elena said. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I need you to understand it's not a game. I'm not playing at danger or pretending at mystery. The rules that govern my life, they don't bend. And if you became visible to the people I answer to the enemies I've made, you would become leverage, a weakness, and weaknesses get exploited in ways that would haunt you." Elena absorbed this, the weight of what he was really saying. "You're telling me that after tonight, even if I wanted to find you again, I couldn't?" "Yes." And that's not negotiable. No. She nodded slowly. Then we understand each other. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. The space that greeted Elena defied every expectation. She'd anticipated cold luxury, the kind of sterile wealth that prioritized status over comfort. Instead, she found something surprisingly intimate. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city spread below like a constellation of lights, but gauzy curtains softened the view, making it dreamlike rather than overwhelming. The furniture was expensive but chosen for beauty, not show. Rich textures, deep colors, pieces that invited touch. Art hung on the walls, real art. Not the investment pieces from the gallery, but paintings and photographs that suggested personal meaning. Books filled built-in shelves, their spines worn from reading. "You actually live here," Elena said, surprised. "Were you expecting a bachelor pad designed to intimidate?" Constantine moved to a bar cart near the windows, began pouring amber liquid into crystal glasses. "I spend enough time playing roles in my work. At home, I get to be something closer to honest." He handed her a glass. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, sending that same electric current through her. "It's whiskey. Japanese. Very old, very smooth. If you don't drink, that's fine." Elena sipped carefully. The liquor was like silk fire, warming her from the inside. She'd expected to feel afraid now that they were alone, now that all the civilized barriers had fallen away. Instead, she felt strangely calm, as if she'd been walking toward this moment her entire life, and finally arriving meant she could stop running. "Show me your hands," Constantine said suddenly. Elena blinked. "What?" "Your hands. Let me see them." Confused, Elena held out her hands, palms up. Constantine set down his glass and took her hands in his, studying them with the same intensity he'd turned on her face in the gallery. His touch was warm, careful, reverent. "You have worker's hands," he said quietly, his thumbs tracing the calluses on her palms. "These aren't from serving champagne. What else do you do?" Elena hesitated, then decided honesty matched the strange intimacy of the moment. "I restore furniture, old pieces, damaged things. It's not a real job, just something I do in my spare time. I buy broken furniture from estate sales, fix it, resell it. Why? Because I like taking something everyone else has given up on and making it beautiful again, making it useful." Constantine's eyes lifted to hers, and something in his expression shifted, softened. "That's what you see when you look at broken things. Potential instead of loss." "I suppose so. What do you see when you look at me, Elena?" The question caught her off guard. She met his gaze, really looked at him, past the expensive clothes and dangerous beauty to whatever truth lived underneath. "I see someone who's tired," she said finally. "Someone who carries too much alone. Someone who's forgotten what it feels like to be touched without strategy or fear." Constantine's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought she'd gone too far, exposed something he didn't want seen. Then he pulled her closer, his movements deliberate, but not aggressive. "You see too much," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "That makes you dangerous? To you? To yourself." His hands moved to her waist, resting there lightly, giving her space to pull away if she chose. "Because now I want to keep you, and keeping you would destroy you." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This close, she could see the complexity in his eyes, layers of feeling he usually kept hidden. "Then don't keep me. Just have me. Tonight. The way we agreed." Something raw crossed his face. "You make it sound simple. Isn't it? We're both adults. We both know what this is, what it isn't. No one gets hurt if we're honest about the limits." Constantine's laugh was low, almost sad. You think honesty prevents hurt? I think lying about what we want definitely causes it. He studied her for a long moment, his hand still resting on her waist, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. Then he leaned down slowly, giving her time to refuse, and kissed her. It wasn't the aggressive, consuming kiss Elena had expected. It was questioning, exploratory, as if he was trying to learn her through touch. His lips were soft, his movements controlled but hungry underneath that control. Elena felt herself melting into him, her hands finding their way to his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him through his expensive shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Constantine rested his forehead against hers. "I need you to be sure," he said quietly. "Once we start this, I don't think I can stop halfway. I've wanted you since the moment I saw you, and I don't want gently. I don't want careful. I want everything, Elena. All of you. Completely." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they ignited something in her chest, something that felt like permission to be equally reckless. "Then take everything," she whispered. "I'm not here for gentle. I'm here because I want to know what it feels like to stop being careful, to be wanted that completely, to be consumed instead of contained." Constantine's control visibly frayed. His hands tightened on her waist, pulling her fully against him. "You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me." That broke something in him. His mouth found hers again, harder this time, demanding. His hands moved up her back, finding the zipper of her dress, sliding it down with practiced ease. The fabric whispered as it fell, pooling at her feet. Elena stood in his arms, wearing only thin lace, feeling exposed and powerful simultaneously. Constantine pulled back to look at her, his eyes dark with want, but also something else. Something that looked almost like reverence. "You're extraordinary," he said, his voice rough. "That's not what I see when I look in the mirror." "Then your mirror lies." His hands traced her collarbone, the curve of her waist, mapping her body with focused attention. "I'm going to show you what I see, Elena. Going to make you understand exactly how extraordinary you are." He lifted her easily, carrying her toward the bedroom. Elena wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms around his neck, surrendering to the inevitability of this moment. The bedroom continued the penthouse's unexpected intimacy. A massive bed dominated the space, but everything else spoke of actual life lived. Books on the nightstand, clothes draped over a chair, windows that framed the city lights like art. Constantine laid her on the bed with surprising gentleness, then stood back, removing his jacket, loosening his tie. Elena watched him undress, seeing the body underneath the expensive armor. He was lean muscle and old scars. The kind of body that told stories of violence survived. When he joined her on the bed, the careful control was gone. He kissed her like a man starving, touched her like he was trying to memorize her shape through his hands alone. Elena met him equally, no longer cautious, no longer performing safety. They moved together with an urgency that felt like recognition, like their bodies understood something their minds hadn't caught up to yet. Time became fluid in Constantine's bed. Minutes or hours, Elena lost track, lost herself in the rhythm they created together. He learned her body with focused intensity, discovering what made her gasp, what made her arch against him, what made her forget every reason this was temporary. And Elena, usually so careful to maintain control, let herself be learned. Let herself want without apology, take without guilt. Constantine touched her like she was sacred and profane simultaneously, reverent and hungry. When he finally entered her, they both froze, locked together, breathing hard, eyes meeting in the dim light. "Elena," he whispered, her name a prayer or a curse or both. Then they were moving, finding a rhythm that felt inevitable, necessary. Elena had been with men before, careful, considerate relationships that felt more like negotiations than passion. But this was different. This was all-consuming, reckless, the kind of intensity that felt like madness and clarity at the same time. She understood, finally, what the poets meant about passion being dangerous. Because this, what they were creating in his bed, felt like the opposite of safety. And she wanted more. They came apart together, breaking and rebuilding simultaneously. In the aftermath, Elena lay in Konstantin's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder, gentle now, the urgency satisfied, but something deeper remaining. "Tell me something true," Elena said quietly. "Something you wouldn't normally share." Konstantin was silent for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I'm tired of being what everyone expects, the ruthless operator, the man without weaknesses. Sometimes I want to just stop, walk away from all of it." "Why don't you?" "Because men like me don't get to walk away. We're either useful or we're liabilities. There's no retirement plan in my world, Elena. Only consequences." Elena processed this, the weight of what he was really saying. Is that why tonight matters? Because it's the closest you get to being just a man, not a position? Perhaps. His hand stilled on her shoulder. Or perhaps it matters because you looked at me in that gallery and saw something other than what I've built. Saw past all the performance. They lay in silence for a while, wrapped together, the city lights painting shadows across the ceiling. Elena knew she should be thinking about tomorrow, about consequences, about getting home. Instead, she let herself exist fully in this moment, this impossible night. "Elena," Konstantin said eventually, his voice different now, more vulnerable. "I need you to understand something. Tonight isn't just about desire for me. It's about forgetting, for just a few hours, the weight of who I have to be. You've given me that gift." Elena turned in his arms to face him. In the low light, he looked younger, less guarded. "You don't have to thank me. I wanted this too." "Wanted." Past tense? There was something almost boyish in the question, a vulnerability that cracked through his usual control. "Want," Elena corrected. Present tense. His smile was slow, genuine. "Good." They made love again, slower this time, learning rather than claiming. Afterward, Konstantin pulled her close, his body curved around hers protectively. Elena felt herself drifting toward sleep, safe in a way that made no logical sense given who held her. She should be afraid, should be planning her escape. Instead, she let herself rest in the temporary sanctuary of his arms. She woke to gray dawn light and an empty bed. Panic seized her for a moment, before she heard sounds from the other room, the quiet movements of someone trying not to disturb. Elena sat up, pulling the sheet around herself, taking in the reality of morning after. Last night's passion felt distant now, almost dreamlike. Konstantin appeared in the doorway, already dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt, looking every inch the dangerous man he'd warned her he was. He carried 2 coffee cups, offered her one. "Good morning," he said quietly. "Morning." Elena accepted the coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. They sipped in awkward silence, the intimacy of last night feeling impossible in daylight's harsh clarity. Finally, Konstantin set down his cup and sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch her. "My driver will take you home whenever you're ready. There's a guest bathroom through there if you want a shower. Your dress is hanging in the closet." So professional now, so distant. Elena felt something twist in her chest. This was what they'd agreed to. One night. nothing more. So why did it hurt? Constantine, don't, he interrupted gently. Please, this is already harder than I expected. Elena nodded, understanding. To say goodbye properly would make it worse, would tempt them both into promises they couldn't keep. Better to end it cleanly, the way they'd agreed. She gathered her things, dressed quickly in the bathroom, avoiding her reflection because she knew it would show someone changed, someone who'd been reckless and survived, but paid a price anyway. When she emerged, Constantine was standing by the windows, staring out at the city. He didn't turn around. The driver is waiting downstairs, he said. He's been instructed to take you wherever you need to go. And Elena, if anyone ever asks about me, about tonight, tell them nothing. For your own safety. I understand. Elena walked to the door, her hand on the knob, knowing she should just leave. Instead, she turned back. Constantine? He looked at her finally, his expression carefully neutral. Thank you, Elena said simply. For tonight. For seeing me. Something cracked in his composure. For just a moment, she saw the man from last night, vulnerable and hungry and human. Then the mask returned. Goodbye, Elena. She left before she could change her mind, before she could beg for something neither of them could have. The elevator ride down felt eternal. The driver was waiting, professional and silent. As the car pulled into morning traffic, Elena looked back once at the building, wondering if Constantine watched her leave. She'd keep her promise. Would tell no one about this night. Would tuck it away like a secret treasure. Proof that she'd been brave once, reckless once, alive once, in a way that made everything else feel pale by comparison. The driver dropped her at her apartment building just as the city was waking up. Elena climbed the stairs to her third-floor walk-up, let herself in, and stood in the center of her small, careful life. Everything looked the same, but she'd changed. She'd touched something dangerous and survived, had been consumed and remained whole. It would be enough, she told herself. It had to be enough, because Constantine was right. One night was all they could have. She showered, washed away his scent and his touch, dressed for her regular Saturday furniture restoration work. Life continued. Days became weeks. Elena threw herself into routine, into the comfortable patterns that had defined her before one reckless October night. But something had shifted. She couldn't quite settle back into her old skin. And then, 6 weeks later, in a pharmacy bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, Elena's carefully reconstructed life shattered completely. There are moments in life where everything divides into before and after. For Elena, that moment came on a Tuesday morning, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead in a pharmacy bathroom, her hands shaking as she stared at the positive pregnancy test. Before, she'd been a woman who'd made one reckless choice and moved on. After, she was a woman carrying the child of a man she could never find again, a man who'd explicitly told her his world was too dangerous for her to inhabit. Elena sat on the closed toilet lid for 15 minutes, test clutched in her hands, trying to breathe through the rising panic. This wasn't possible. They'd used protection. She was careful with her birth control, except she'd been on antibiotics the week before for a sinus infection, and the pharmacist had warned her, and she'd forgotten, lost in the chaos of that night. One mistake. One night. One consequence that would last forever. The first person Elena told was her best friend, Carmen, who arrived at her apartment that evening with wine she couldn't drink and a fierce hug that made Elena finally cry. "Does he know?" Carmen asked gently, after Elena had explained the situation in halting words, leaving out the details that felt too private to share. "I can't tell him," Elena said, wiping her eyes. "I don't even know his last name, Carmen. Don't know where he works or how to contact him. And even if I could find him, he was clear. One night. No contact after. His world is dangerous. This changes that, Carmen insisted. He has a right to know he's going to be a father. Does he? He told me explicitly that being connected to him would put me at risk. How much more at risk would a child be? Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her still flat stomach. Maybe some men don't get to know. Maybe this is the price of his dangerous life. Carmen studied her friend for a long moment. And what about you? Can you do this alone? I don't have a choice. You always have choices, Elena. But did she? Elena had grown up watching her mother struggle as a single parent after her father left, had vowed never to repeat that pattern, never to bring a child into instability. Yet here she was, 26 years old, working 2 jobs to make rent, pregnant by a man whose last name she didn't know. The responsible choice would be not to continue the pregnancy. Elena knew that logically. But when she thought about ending it, something fierce and protective rose in her chest. This was her baby. Hers. The only piece of that extraordinary night she got to keep. Over the following weeks, Elena built a plan. She'd continue working until she couldn't anymore, save every penny, apply for WIC and other assistance programs. She'd move to a cheaper apartment, cut expenses to the bone. She could do this. Had to do this. The pregnancy was textbook normal. Morning sickness that lasted all day for the first trimester, then blessed relief. Her body changed, belly swelling with undeniable evidence of the life growing inside. She felt the first kicks at 18 weeks, lying in bed alone, marveling at the butterfly flutter that meant not alone, never alone again. Elena worked the gallery events until her 6th month, when her boss gently suggested she take leave. "You're a liability in your condition," he said, not unkindly. "Insurance won't cover you serving guests while that pregnant." So she focused on furniture restoration, working from her apartment, refinishing pieces while her belly grew. She nested like every expecting mother, preparing the small corner of her studio that would serve as a nursery. Second-hand crib, donated clothes, everything carefully chosen within her limited budget. She was scared. Terrified, actually. But also strangely at peace. This baby, this unexpected consequence of one reckless night, felt like the most real thing in her life. She talked to the growing child, told stories, played music. "Your father," she said one evening, her hands on her belly, feeling the answering kick. "Your father was extraordinary, dangerous and beautiful, and the loneliest person I've ever known. He would love you if he knew about you. But keeping us safe means keeping us secret." The baby kicked again, as if understanding. Elena named him before he was born, felt instinctively she was carrying a son. Mikhail, she decided, a name with Russian roots, a quiet acknowledgement of the father he'd never know. She was 37 weeks along when everything changed. Elena had gone to the grocery store, waddling through the aisles, loading her cart with staples she could afford. She was in the produce section, trying to decide if splurging on fresh berries was justified, when she felt it. That prickle of awareness, the same sensation she'd felt in the gallery so many months ago. The sense of being watched by someone whose attention changed the air pressure in the room. Elena turned slowly, her hand going protectively to her swollen belly. And there, 4 aisles away, standing absolutely still in a gray coat that probably cost more than her car, was Konstantin. His eyes locked on hers across the distance. She watched shock register on his face, watched his gaze drop to her pregnant belly, watched understanding and something else, something that looked like fury and fear and hunger all mixed together, transform his expression. Time stopped. The grocery store, the other shoppers, everything faded except this man, and this moment, and the undeniable evidence of what they'd created together. Konstantin moved first, crossing the distance between them with long, purposeful strides. Elena's heart hammered. She should run, should grab her cart and escape, should protect her child from this dangerous man. But she stood frozen, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the cart handle, watching him approach like fate itself. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to touch, but maintaining that careful distance. When he spoke, his voice was rough, controlled fury barely leashed. "Is that mine?" Not hello. Not explanation for why he was here. Just that question, stark and undeniable. Elena lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't?" The single word cracked like a whip. "Don't lie to me, Elena. Is that my child?" She could deny it. Should deny it. Could claim another man, another story, anything to protect Mikhail from Konstantin's dangerous world. But standing there, watching rage and fear, and something painfully close to hope war across his features, Elena couldn't lie. "Yes." The word hung between them like a grenade. Konstantin's face transformed. Elena watched emotions cascade across his features, too quickly to name. Shock, fury, fear. And underneath it all, something that looked terrifyingly like possession. "How long have you known?" His voice was deadly quiet. "From the beginning. Since 6 weeks. 6 weeks." He repeated it like he was testing the weight of the betrayal. "You've known for 7 months that you're carrying my child, and you said nothing. Tried to hide it from me." "You told me to disappear," Elena said, her voice shaking but steady. "You said your world was too dangerous, that I'd become a liability. What was I supposed to do, Konstantin? Show up at your door pregnant and demand you acknowledge a child you never wanted? That wasn't your decision to make. It wasn't yours either." They stared at each other, the grocery store fading around them. Other shoppers gave them a wide berth, sensing the tension radiating from the tall, dangerous-looking man confronting the heavily pregnant woman. "We can't do this here," Konstantin said finally, visibly trying to regain control. "Come with me. We need to talk. Properly." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Elena." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I'm not asking. That's my child you're carrying. Mine. Do you understand what that means? What you've been risking by trying to do this alone? Your world is dangerous, remember? You said knowing you would put me at risk. How much more dangerous for an innocent child? Which is exactly why you need my protection. Do you have any idea how many people would love to discover I have a weakness? How they'd use you, use that baby, to get to me?" His hand moved toward her belly, stopped just short of touching. "You've been walking around the city for months, visibly pregnant with my heir, completely unprotected. You could have been killed, Elena. Both of you." The fear in his voice was real, palpable. Elena felt her resolve waver. "How did you find me?" "I didn't. This is chance, fate, God's cruel humor." He laughed, a harsh sound. "I came back to this neighborhood sometimes. Not looking for you. I promised myself I wouldn't look. But I'd walk past the gallery, past the places I thought you might be, telling myself I was just passing through." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "Today, I needed milk. Milk, Elena. The most mundane thing in the world. And I walk into this store, and there you are, carrying my child, trying to hide in the produce section like I wouldn't feel your presence the moment I entered the building." Elena's hand moved protectively over her belly. Mikhail kicked, as if sensing the tension. Konstantin's eyes followed the movement, his expression softening slightly. "Please," he said quietly. "Come with me. Let me at least ensure you're safe. You can hate me, resent me, refuse to let me be part of this. But let me protect you. Both of you. There was no good choice. Refusing might anger him, might make things worse. But going with him meant entering the world he'd warned her away from. One conversation, Elena said finally. Then you let me go. I can't promise that. Then we have nothing to talk about. They stood at an impasse. Finally, Constantine nodded, though his expression suggested this was far from over. One conversation. My car is outside. The same black car. The same silent driver. Elena climbed in awkwardly, her pregnant body making graceful movement impossible. Constantine slid in beside her, maintaining careful distance, though she could feel the tension radiating from him. They drove in silence. Elena watched the familiar streets pass, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or if the biggest mistake had been 9 months ago, when she'd followed this man into a private room and said yes to something she'd never fully understood. The car pulled into the same underground garage, the same private elevator. Elena's heart raced as they ascended. When the doors opened to the penthouse, memories flooded back. That night, his hands on her skin, the way he'd looked at her like she was sacred. Sit, Constantine said, gesturing to the couch. Please, you shouldn't be on your feet. Elena sat, grateful. Her back ached, her ankles were swollen, and the baby had been pressing on her bladder for weeks. Constantine disappeared into the kitchen, returned with water, and what looked like expensive cheese and fruit. Eat, he commanded, setting the plate in front of her. You look too thin. I'm 8 months pregnant. Yes, and you're still too thin. Are you eating properly? Taking vitamins? Seeing a doctor? The barrage of questions felt like an attack. Elena bristled. I'm managing fine. Managing. He practically spat the word. You should be thriving, Elena. Comfortable. Cared for. Instead, you're managing. Working yourself to exhaustion. Probably living in some inadequate apartment. Trying to do everything alone because of my stupidity. Your stupidity? I should have found you. Should have checked. Should have known. This is my failure. Elena laughed, a bitter sound. Your failure? I'm the one who got pregnant, who made the choice to keep it, who decided not to find you. This isn't your failure, Constantine. It's my responsibility. Our child is never going to be just your responsibility. He knelt in front of her, bringing his face level with hers. Never, Elena. Do you understand? I don't care what I said that night. I don't care about the rules of my world or the danger or any of it. That's my son or daughter in there, and you're carrying them. Everything changes now. You don't even know if you want to be a father. I didn't know I wanted to be anything except what I was until you appeared. Now I know I want this. Want you. Want our child. Want the family I never thought I could have. Elena's breath caught. You can't just decide that. I already have. It doesn't work that way, Constantine. You can't walk back into my life after 9 months and demand forever just because an accident happened. Accident. His jaw tightened. Is that what our child is to you? You know that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Elena? Because it sounds like you're trying very hard to keep me out, to pretend I don't exist, to raise my child alone rather than let me be part of their life. Elena felt tears threaten. Pregnancy hormones made everything harder, every emotion sharper. I'm trying to protect them, and myself. You said your world was dangerous, that knowing you would make me a target. How is any of that different now? Because now you're already at risk. Now you're visibly, undeniably connected to me. If my enemies learn about this pregnancy, and they will, you'll need my protection. Need my resources. Need me. He took her hands. his touch gentle despite the intensity in his voice. Let me do this right, Elena. Let me take care of you. Both of you. Elena wanted to resist, wanted to maintain her independence, prove she didn't need anyone. But sitting there, pregnant and exhausted, facing a man who looked at her like she held his entire world in her body, she felt something crack inside. The careful walls she'd built around herself, around this pregnancy, crumbled just slightly. "What does taking care of us look like to you?" she asked quietly. Constantine released her hands, sat back on his heels. "First, you move out of whatever inadequate place you're living, and into somewhere safe, somewhere I control, where my security can ensure no one gets to you without going through them first. I'm not moving in here. I wasn't suggesting that. I have several properties. You choose which one feels comfortable. Constantine. Second, you stop working. Completely. No more furniture restoration, no more stress, no more risking yourself or the baby because you're worried about money. I can't just stop working. I have bills, responsibilities, which I'll handle, all of it. Rent, medical expenses, everything. You focus on staying healthy and carrying our child safely." Elena shook her head. "That makes me dependent on you. What happens after the baby comes? Do I just keep taking your money forever? Become some kept woman in a gilded cage? Would that be so terrible?" "Yes," the word came out sharp, certain. "I won't be owned, Constantine. Won't trade my independence for security. I've watched too many women make that mistake." He studied her for a long moment. "Your mother." It wasn't a question. Somehow he'd understood. "My mother loved a man who promised her everything and delivered nothing but disappointment and debt. I won't repeat her mistakes. I'm not your father, Elena. No, you're worse. You're actually capable of providing everything you promise, which makes the trap that much more dangerous." Constantine stood, paced to the windows, stared out at the city. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled, but she could hear the emotion underneath. "I understand your fear. Understand why you want to maintain independence. But Elena, whether you accept it or not, you're carrying the heir to my organization. That makes you valuable to people who want to hurt me. That makes you and our child targets. I can't change that. Can only try to protect you from it." "What organization?" Elena asked, though she thought she already knew. "Don't ask questions I can't answer without putting you in more danger." "I'm already in danger, apparently. Might as well know what kind." He turned to face her. "The kind where knowledge itself becomes a weapon. Where knowing too much means you can't plead ignorance if things go wrong. I won't do that to you, Elena. Won't make you complicit in things you're better off not understanding." They were at an impasse again. Elena could feel it. The fundamental incompatibility between what she needed and what he was offering. "I need time," she said finally. "Time to think, to process. You can't just appear after 9 months and expect me to upend my entire life." "How much time?" "I don't know. A week? A month? However long it takes me to figure out what's actually best for this baby." "You don't have a month, Elena. You're due in what, 3 weeks? 4? 5 if I go to my due date. 5 weeks. He processed this. "What's your medical situation? Are you seeing a good doctor? Is someone with you for appointments?" "I'm seeing a clinic doctor, and Carmen comes to the important appointments." "Carmen, my best friend. She's been helping me prepare." Constantine nodded slowly. "I want to be at the next appointment. Want to see that you're being properly cared for, that the baby is healthy." "Constantine, please." The single word held more vulnerability than any of his demands. "Let me at least do that much. Let me see proof that you're both okay." How could she refuse that? Despite everything, despite the danger and complication and fear, this man was the father of her child. He deserved at least that much. "Okay," Elena said quietly. "There's an appointment Thursday afternoon. You can come." Something like relief flooded his features. "Thank you." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Constantine moved to sit beside her on the couch, careful not to touch her. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her belly. Elena hesitated, then nodded. His hand moved slowly, settled gently on the swell of her stomach. They both froze when the baby kicked against his palm, a firm, unmistakable response to his father's touch. Constantine's expression transformed into something Elena had never seen before. Wonder, pure and absolute. "That's really our child," he whispered. "Yes. I can feel them moving. He moves a lot, especially at night when I'm trying to sleep." "He?" Constantine's eyes snapped to hers. "You know it's a boy." "Just a feeling. I haven't asked them to tell me the gender. Wanted it to be a surprise." "Mikhail," Constantine's voice was reverent. "If it's a boy, you should name him Mikhail. It means, who is like God. A strong name." Elena's breath caught. She'd chosen the same name. This impossible coincidence, another thread binding them together. "I was already planning to call him Mikhail," she admitted. Constantine's hand tightened slightly on her belly. "You were naming him in the Russian tradition. I wanted him to have something of you, even if you never knew about him." The words hung between them, confession and gift, and wound all at once. Constantine leaned forward, pressed his forehead to her shoulder. "I would have wanted to know, Elena. If I'd had any idea, I would have found you, would have been here." "I know. That's part of why I didn't tell you, because I knew you'd feel obligated. Would try to do the right thing, even if it destroyed us both." He lifted his head, met her eyes. "And if I want to do the right thing not out of obligation, but because I want this, want you, want the family we could be?" Elena's heart ached. "Want isn't enough, Constantine. People want things that hurt them all the time." "Then what is enough?" "I don't know. Safety, stability. A father who can be present without putting his child at risk. Can you give me those things?" The question hung between them, impossible to answer. They both knew his world didn't allow for simple fatherhood, for weekend visits and school plays and normal family life. "I can try," Constantine said finally. "Can learn. Can build something different than what I've been. If you'll let me." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this dangerous man could transform into a present father, that their child could have what she'd always lacked. But want wasn't enough. Trust had to be earned. "Prove it," she said. "Come to the appointment Thursday. Be present. Be supportive. Show me you can handle the mundane reality of pregnancy and parenthood. Then maybe we can talk about what comes next." Constantine nodded slowly. "Thursday. I'll be there." Elena let him call his driver to take her home. Let him walk her to the car, his hand hovering protectively at her lower back without quite touching. As the car pulled away, she looked back to see him standing in the garage entrance, watching her leave, looking lost in a way she'd never expected from such a powerful man. Carmen was waiting at Elena's apartment, demanding a full report. Elena told her everything, watching her friend's expression shift from concern to cautious optimism. "He wants to be involved," Carmen said carefully. "That's good, right? That's what you hoped for?" "I don't know what I hoped for," Elena admitted. "Part of me wanted him to stay gone, to let me do this alone and stay safe. And part of me wanted exactly this, him coming back, wanting us." "What did your gut tell you when you saw him?" Elena closed her eyes, remembering that moment in the grocery store. The shock, the fear, but also the relief, the sense that maybe she didn't have to carry this alone anymore. "That I'm in trouble," she whispered. because I don't think I can say no to him. And I don't know if that's pregnancy hormones talking or something deeper, something dangerous. Thursday arrived with spring rain and nerves that made Elena's hands shake. She dressed carefully in one of her few remaining outfits that fit over her belly, a soft blue dress that Carmen swore made her glow. She felt anything but glowing. She felt terrified. The clinic was small but clean, staffed by nurses who knew her by name after 8 months of regular visits. Elena checked in, settled into the waiting room, trying to calm her racing heart. She wasn't sure Konstantin would actually come. Part of her hoped he wouldn't, that he'd thought better of this complicated entanglement. That hope died when he walked through the clinic doors exactly on time, dressed in dark jeans and a gray sweater, looking simultaneously out of place and completely in command. His eyes found hers immediately, his expression softening when he saw her. Elena. He crossed to her, held out his hand to help her up. How are you feeling? Nervous. You? Terrified. The honesty surprised her. I've negotiated deals worth millions, faced down men who wanted me dead, and none of it scared me as much as this appointment. As potentially seeing my child for the first time. The nurse called her name before Elena could respond. Konstantin followed her into the examination room, his presence filling the small space. Dr. Patel, Elena's regular physician, looked surprised to see a man accompanying her, but recovered quickly. Elena, good to see you. And you must be the father? Konstantin nodded, suddenly looking uncomfortable in a way Elena had never seen. Konstantin. Wonderful. Let's check how mother and baby are doing. Elena, up on the table, please. The examination was routine, familiar after months of appointments. Dr. Patel measured Elena's belly, checked her blood pressure, listened to the baby's heartbeat through the Doppler. That sound, strong and steady, filled the room. Elena watched Konstantin's face transform as he heard his son's heart beating. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. That's him. His voice was rough. That's him, Dr. Patel confirmed. Very strong heartbeat. Everything looks great. Elena's blood pressure is a bit elevated, which we'll monitor, but overall, this is a healthy pregnancy. Would you like to see an ultrasound? I can do a quick one to check position. Please, Konstantin said before Elena could answer. Dr. Patel applied gel to Elena's exposed belly, ran the ultrasound wand across her skin. The monitor flickered to life, showing grainy black and white images that gradually resolved into their son. There he was, 10 fingers visible, strong profile, actively moving. Elena had seen ultrasounds before, but watching Konstantin see their child for the first time made it different, more real. Daughter leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen, one hand still holding hers, the other reaching out as if he could touch their son through the monitor. He's perfect, Konstantin whispered. Look at him, Elena. He's perfect. He's active, Dr. Patel said with a smile. Head down, good position. If you go into labor naturally, you should have a straightforward delivery. Elena, are you still planning to deliver here at the clinic? That was the plan, Elena said cautiously, feeling Konstantin's hand tighten on hers. Actually, Konstantin said carefully, I was hoping we could discuss other options, private hospitals with more resources. Dr. Patel looked between them diplomatically. The clinic has excellent birthing facilities, but if you have concerns, we can certainly refer you elsewhere. Elena, it's your choice. Elena felt trapped between what she could afford and what Konstantin was offering. Can we discuss it? She asked quietly. After the appointment, they sat in Konstantin's car, rain drumming on the roof. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Konstantin broke the silence. I want to set up trust funds, for Mikhail and for you. Money that's legally yours, that can't be taken away. So you're never dependent on my goodwill or my continued presence. Constantine, let me finish. I want you to have the best medical care possible. Not because the clinic isn't good, but because I can afford better, and our son deserves every advantage. I want you to consider moving somewhere more secure, somewhere my people can ensure you're safe, and I want to be present. For the birth, for late-night feedings, for all of it. Elena's chest tightened. You're describing a life together. Yes. We barely know each other. I know you're stubborn and proud and fiercely independent. Know you restore broken furniture because you believe in second chances. Know you're terrified of becoming your mother, but strong enough to raise a child alone, rather than compromise your principles. Know that you're carrying my son, and that every time I see you, I want things I've never let myself want before. The raw honesty in his voice undid something in Elena. What things? Family. Home. Someone to come back to who isn't an asset or an obligation. Someone who sees me as more than what I do, who I have to be. You did that 9 months ago, Elena. Looked at me like I was just a man, and I haven't been able to forget it. That night was supposed to be temporary. Nothing about you has ever felt temporary. They sat in charged silence, rain and heartbeat, and possibility filling the space between them. Elena knew she was at a crossroads, could keep pushing him away, keep trying to do this alone, or could let him in, trust that he meant what he said, risk her heart and her child's future on this dangerous, complicated man. I'm scared, she admitted finally. Of what? Of wanting this too much, of letting you in and having you realize this isn't what you actually want. Of our son growing up watching his father choose his dangerous world over his family. Constantine turned in his seat, taking both her hands. I can't promise I'm not dangerous, Elena. Can't promise my world won't touch our lives. But I can promise I choose you. Choose him. Whatever that means, whatever sacrifices it requires, I choose this family. Elena searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Found only fierce certainty. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it properly. I'm not some mistress you visit when convenient. If you're going to be Mikhail's father, you're present, involved. No halfway commitment. I wouldn't want halfway. And I need independence. My own space, my own money, my own life. I won't be kept or controlled. Agreed. Within reason, if reason means keeping you safe. Elena nodded slowly. Then we can try to build something. For Mikhail. For Mikhail, Constantine repeated. And for us. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, and kissed her. It was different from the desperate passion of 9 months ago. This was promise, commitment, the beginning of something rather than a beautiful ending. When they broke apart, Elena rested her forehead against his. I'm still scared, she whispered. So am I. But I think we're brave enough to be scared together. The weeks between that appointment and Mikhail's birth passed in a blur of preparation and tentative connection. Constantine kept his promise, present but not overwhelming, giving Elena space while making clear he wasn't going anywhere. He moved her into a spacious 2-bedroom apartment in a secure building, furniture chosen by Elena but paid for by him, a compromise that satisfied her need for control and his need to provide. He attended every remaining doctor's appointment, asked questions, took notes like he was studying for the most important exam of his life. He was there when Elena's water broke 3 days before her due date, driving her to the hospital with steady hands, despite the fear she could see in his eyes. Labor was long, exhausting, painful in ways Elena hadn't fully anticipated. But Constantine stayed beside her the entire time, holding her hand, breathing with her, murmuring encouragement in Russian when English failed him. And when Mikhail finally arrived, tiny and perfect and screaming his outrage at the world, Konstantin caught him with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He's here," Konstantin whispered, cradling their son against his chest. "Elena, look, he's really here." Elena, exhausted and overwhelmed, watched this dangerous man transform into something gentler as he held their son. Watched him count Mikhail's fingers and toes, marvel at tiny eyelashes, press reverent kisses to a downy head. In that moment, she knew she'd made the right choice. Whatever complications lay ahead, whatever dangers lurked in Konstantin's world, their son would know his father's love. The first weeks were chaos, sleepless nights, endless feedings, the strange intimacy of caring for a helpless infant while learning to be parents together. Konstantin moved into the guest room of Elena's apartment, refused to leave even when she snapped at him from exhaustion or pushed him away from insecurity. He changed diapers with focused intensity, learned to swaddle, walked the apartment at 3 a.m. with a crying baby, while Elena desperately tried to sleep. They fought sometimes, exhausted arguments, about schedules and boundaries, and whose turn it was to handle the fussing. But they also laughed, shared the strange joy of watching Mikhail discover his own hands, celebrated the first genuine smile that wasn't just gas. And slowly, carefully, they built something that started to resemble a family. Konstantin's work still pulled him away sometimes, mysterious disappearances for a day or two that he couldn't fully explain. Elena learned not to ask, to trust that he'd come back, that he was balancing two worlds as best he could. He'd return exhausted, haunted, but he'd go straight to Mikhail's crib, stand there watching their son sleep, and Elena would see his features soften, the dangerous man yielding to the protective father. On Mikhail's 2-month birthday, Elena woke to find Konstantin already up, sitting in the nursery rocker, with their son asleep on his chest. She stood in the doorway, unnoticed, watching them in the early morning light. Konstantin's hand curved protectively over Mikhail's back, his expression unguarded in a way it never was when he knew someone was watching. "I know you're there," he said quietly, not looking up. Elena smiled, padding into the room. "How long have you been awake?" "A few hours. He was fussy. Didn't want you to wake up." He finally looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. "Elena, I need to tell you something." Her stomach tightened. "What?" "I'm in love with you." The words hung in the dawn-lit nursery. "I fell in love with you 9 months ago, but I was too afraid to acknowledge it. Told myself it was just desire, just one perfect night. But I thought about you every day, walked past places I thought you might be, told myself it was better this way, that you were safer without me. Then I saw you in that grocery store, pregnant and alone, and I realized I'd been lying to myself. I loved you then. Love you now. Love this family we're building." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Konstantin, you don't have to say it back, don't have to feel the same. I just needed you to know. Needed to stop pretending this is just about Mikhail. You're not just the mother of my child, Elena. You're the woman I want to wake up beside every morning. The one I want to grow old with. The only one who's ever made me want to be better than what I was built to be." Elena crossed the room, knelt beside the rocker, her hand covering his where it rested on Mikhail's back. "I love you too," she whispered. "I'm terrified of it. Terrified. Of what it means, but I love you. Loved you from that first night, even though I knew I shouldn't. Every day since has just made it more undeniable." Konstantin's free hand moved to cup her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. "We're going to make this work, Elena. All of it. I don't know how yet, but we will. Because walking away from you, from him, from this, it's not an option anymore. You're mine. He's mine. And I protect what's mine. She should have bristled at the possessiveness in his words. Instead, she felt safe, claimed in the best possible way. This was what she'd been afraid to want, what she'd convinced herself was impossible. Love that was fierce and complicated and real. They married quietly 3 months later, just Carmen as witness, and Mikhail sleeping peacefully through the brief ceremony. No elaborate celebration, no announcement to Konstantin's dangerous world. Just 2 people promising to build a life together, despite every obstacle. It wasn't perfect. Konstantin's work still created tension, moments when Elena felt the weight of what he wouldn't tell her. But he came home. Always came home, to her and Mikhail, to the family that had become his anchor. On their first anniversary, with Mikhail toddling between them on chubby legs, Konstantin pulled Elena close and whispered, "Thank you." For what? For seeing me, for taking the risk, for giving me this. I spent so long believing I didn't deserve softness, didn't deserve love. You proved me wrong. You and our son. You're my redemption. Elena kissed him, this complicated, dangerous, beautiful man who'd given her everything she'd been too afraid to want. "We're big enough to love each other completely," she said, echoing words from a lifetime ago. "That's what you taught me, that it's not about being perfect or safe. It's about choosing each other every single day and building something worth keeping." And there, in the home they'd created, with their son laughing between them, Konstantin finally understood what he'd been searching for his entire life. Not power, or respect, or fear. Just this: being known completely. Loved despite and because of his flaws, and having someone to come home to who saw him as simply human. One reckless night had led to 9 months of fear and a lifetime of love. And neither of them would change a single moment. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from. And if you felt it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt this story was really worth listening to, also click the Super Thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us continue creating stories that touch the soul.